So, hello and welcome to Composition Activities for Creative Minds. My name is David Love. I am from Rexburg, Idaho, right near BYU Idaho's campus. Um, this is my second webinar I've given, so I'm still learning quite a bit about how to work the technical difficulties out, but I appreciate having all of you here. Now, this is a unique circumstance because I can't see you, but you can see me. So here I am in my piano studio room, as you can see my piano in the background there, and I am talking to my computer. So I'm going to imagine that you're participating. In fact, if you have an iPad handy, I invite you to open up to some of the apps as I'm going through the presentation. That will help with engagement, keep you interested, and I'll do my best to show you new things that hopefully you haven't discovered before. First of all, I have to just acknowledge that this webinar, and I'm grateful to acknowledge that this webinar is made possible by JoyTunes. They cover all of the hosting to make this possible. As many of you might know, Leela Javis last month gave a webinar as well, and I gave the first one. This will be my second. So the third total in the webinars that we've given. We're grateful to JoyTunes. And they are, just so you're aware, the proud makers of Piano Maestro and Dustbuster. One great thing about JoyTunes is they're not partial to their own apps. That's why today we won't be talking much about Piano Maestro and Dustbuster at all even. We're going to be talking about composition apps and activities that you can do with your students to keep them engaged in the process of writing their own songs and music. Just out of curiosity, I'd like to know if this is your first webinar that you're viewing or if you've seen the ones in the past. That's great to see. We like to see first timers. That's great to have so many people here for the first time. So welcome. Good to have you. Let's begin. Let's really dive deep into this. So, why compose with your students? From Bach to Bartok, young piano students learn to compose. It was always included in the curriculum. It wasn't something that was just added on because the student was interested, but that was part of their studies. It was a tradition held for many, many years, and until the last maybe 50 years is something that we've, as piano teachers, I feel we've kind of left behind. Teaching composition unlocks different parts of the brain, and it just gives the students a well-rounded education. Who knows if your student's going to be the next Beethoven or Mozart? But doesn't matter. Perhaps they will do something in their life completely different than music, but they'll be grateful that they learned these skills. Also, teaching composition makes students happy. Happy students equals happy parents, and if we have happy parents and happy students, well, that's the best job ever. I know that I really enjoy my job when I receive feedback or I receive smiles from parents and students alike. So what apps are available for composition? I should mention that JoyTunes has received a lot of feedback about these webinars saying we want to see more apps. What's out there? So today we're going to cover a variety of them very briefly. The first 7 we'll talk about briefly, and then we're going to dive deep into GarageBand. I'm going to show you how I use it with my students. We start off with TuneTrain. How it works is once you open the app and you start a level, or if you start a game, the students take this train and they can choose if they go up or down, and all of the notes that they can choose or the places they can go to on the train makes a different pitch. So it's very easy to create quick melodies. It always sounds great. You can't play a wrong note on this game. They can also see at the top what their notes actually look like. And then you can choose a variety of different backgrounds. There's 2 or 3 for each level, from a rock beat, a pop beat, to classical. And also, of course, it's visually engaging. The next app is Music Learning Lab. This app has multiple profiles, so you can put more than one student on it. Unfortunately, I believe it only goes to 5 right now. I bet with some feedback from consumers, they'd probably raise that limit, knowing that piano teachers are using it. This one's kind of like Tune Train, except for there's no traveling. They basically put right on the screen what they want to hear. There's more room for error, but there's also more room for variety and for change. So this game not only teaches composition, but it teaches basic things about music, about pitch, high and low. I mentioned multiple profiles. And then you create your own song as well to a background track, and you can choose a variety of those to play along with. It makes it more engaging, makes it fun, and it's a win-win right from the very beginning. So these are great games for beginners. This next one, I wouldn't say so much for a beginner, though a beginner could play around with it. It's pretty difficult and time-consuming, but very engaging. Basically, this game, Isle of Tune, is SimCity meets music. The road is the staff, and the houses and trees and other objects along the road are the different pitches, the different sounds. So some represent drums, some represent a piano sound, or a digital piano, just a variety. I'm going to go back to that. This is a video so you can see kind of how it works. I'm trying something completely new here where I have to change my inputs and outputs of my audio so that you can hear this video. Bear with me, this might take just a second. As I change my input and output, you're not going to be able to hear me for just a minute, but you'll be able to hear the video. Here we go. All right, I'm back. Can you hear me now? Okay, perfect. Okay, here we go. So now, I should also mention, I see questions coming in. Of course, I'll answer those at the end. But if you do have a question that comes up right now, feel free to type that in so that I address that. Let's go back to this. So you can kind of see that if you spend a lot of time in that app, you can create a really cool tune. I guess some might pose the question, why not just do that on the staff? Well, SimCity's fun. Kids are really into gaming these days, and it's fun. It looks cool. This next app, Muzart, is a fun one as well. The kids really enjoy this one. So the notes are the farm animals. They have preloaded songs you can choose from. Something like a folk song, Yankee Doodle, for example. And then what you could do with your students is you could take a simple melody and then have them drag. It's a drag and drop interface. You can have them drag the notes to a different location on the staff to kind of give it a little bit of a twist. You can teach that melody writing is not layered. A melody is a single line, whereas you see on the screen here that we have some harmony going on. You could teach them how to create harmonies as well by layering different sounds. Lots of different varieties here. In fact, this isn't related to composition so much, but you could put the scale, your C major scale in, or whatever scales you're doing for adjudication, and have them practice along with the horse. They're having fun and they're learning what they're supposed to learn and staying engaged. So there are a variety of sounds to use on this app. This next one is a very complicated but easy to use app. I shouldn't use the word complicated as much as lots of options. You can create instant background tracks in a variety of styles: rock, pop, jazz. There's some even classical patterns. This is great for improvising. If you put on just a basic 1-4-5 chord progression, your student could improvise in C position, or we can transpose it to F, and they can transpose in F. Great way to teach a variety of styles. This next one I'm going to show you a video too, but I don't need to change the audio. Notate Me. You use your stylus or finger. You can teach your students to write.
For the first time ever, use your finger or stylus to write.
You can have your students learn how to write the traditional way, but then have a clean score to print off in the end. This is a pretty neat app. I've used it myself a little bit, but I am still sold on Finale. I still use Finale to write projects, my own composition projects, and little worksheets for students and things like that. You can kind of see as the guy at the bottom writes, it appears cleanly at the top. You could have your students write out their exercises, or if we're sticking with composition, write out their melodies. And then this next one, Notion, is probably a more traditional way to notate your music. I think it's probably the most mainstream iPad notation app. It has a very simple interface, easy to learn. You'll see how this looks and how it all works. With these apps, there is a learning curve, but it's very possible to figure these out. It just takes a little bit of time. These apps as well have tutorials online. Lots of people have made instructional videos on how to use them. Okay. So this is what I'm really excited to talk about. This summer, we decided to change things up a bit. We wanted our students to enroll for the summer and not take a break. So we really promoted our pop showcase, which is taking place at the end of July. We advertised that for weeks to students and parents, just to provide a change of pace. I've taught lead sheets before, but not at the same level. When I teach pop music, there are simplified arrangements, but what I've found is the students are more enabled to create if they have something as simple as a lead sheet. So I'm going to show you how to teach your students how to play a lead sheet, which is very simple. There's not much to it. And then I'll show you how to use that lead sheet to guide you as you create a background track in GarageBand to play along with. I have pre-recorded videos that I'm going to use. Be aware of that. The volume of my voice might change. And know that as I'm showing these GarageBand tracks, that it will be just my voice, and you'll be able to hear that. You should be able to hear the sounds of the iPad as well. So how do we read a lead sheet? How do you teach your students to read a lead sheet? Or where do we get a lead sheet first, I should say. I've been getting my lead sheets from musicnotes.com. They also have an app called musicnotes.com Sheet Music Viewer, where you can print off your arrangements, but also have a digital copy. or print off these lead sheets. If you are looking for lead sheets specifically at musicnotes.com, oh, okay, you can just type in whatever you're looking for. So, for example, I'm looking for the Beatles, and I'm going to just type lead sheet after that, and then any song that they have that's in lead sheet form, um, any song that's in lead sheet form will appear below. You can also go to the start at the left side of the screen and go down to browse sheet music and browse all lead sheets. That's another way to look for them. There are a lot of lead sheets out there, very contemporary pieces or pop songs like from Coldplay, American Authors, Maroon 5. They have lots of music out there that the kids enjoy listening to. So how do we teach kids to read a lead sheet? Well, it's pretty simple. Step one, you learn to play the melody with the right hand. For your beginners, help them with finger numbers. Their hand might be jumping around. For early elementary students, this might be too difficult. I'm doing this with level 1 students that are probably halfway through Piano Adventures level 1, for example. These students, these students are very capable of learning the right hand. Very basic. So step 1, learn to play the melody with the right hand. Step 2 is to learn to play chord shells in the left hand. Now, this is probably maybe one of the scary things about lead sheets for teachers that have never used them before. Is how do I teach my kids to read a D sus4 chord or a C11 or whatever variety of chords that they can find? And so what I teach my students to do is look at the first letter only. So if it says C7 or C sus7, I'm only going to worry about C. So I put my 5th finger on C. I'll have my student do that. And then their hand is shaped naturally to have their thumb fall right on the 5th. That's what the chord shell is. So they're playing the root with their 5th finger and then a 5th higher with their thumb. It makes it very basic and easy to learn. If you're worried about your students being able to comprehend all this all at once, you can do step 1, week 1. Step 2 could be week 2. With some of my more advanced students, I teach them all this in one lesson, and they come back knowing the piece perfectly with chord shells in the left hand. Step 3 would be to put hands together. And then step 4 is to embellish, arrange, and then maybe even create a GarageBand track. This is where I'll start teaching arpeggios or rock patterns or the famous Chopin chord in the left hand, just to broaden the sound, make it come alive a little bit more. For your more advanced students, you can have them take their right hand and play the melody only with their 3rd, 4th, and 5th fingers, and then play harmony notes with their thumb and 2nd finger. So now how do we create the background track? This is the fun part for me. I love doing this with students. Now imagine how you would do this with your students, because you could easily take over the lesson and they would watch you create their background track for them. You don't want that to happen. You want them to touch as many or tap as many buttons as possible, record their own tracks, but with your guidance. This clip is where we're going to go to that video, and it's going to show you how I first set up the track. How do you get started? Remember that the song that we're going to do, as I should remind all of us, is Hey Jude. In Hey Jude, we have 3 chords that we use in the first section. So it's very basic, very easy to create a GarageBand track, and you're gonna see that in just a second. I'm going to swap out the audio so you'll hear the computer's audio and hear this recording. When you first load GarageBand, You will see all previous songs created, or just a demo if it's your first time looking at the app. At the top left of the screen, you will see a plus sign. When you click on it, you will see that you have the option to create a new song. Let's click on it. Once you've started a new song, your instrument options for your first track will appear. As you can see, there are a variety of instruments, primarily those used in pop music. Notice that some of these instruments have gears around them. These ones are smart instruments and have the ability to play pre-recorded accompaniment patterns to any chord. Today we're going to choose the smart piano. And once we've made that selection, we can now change the tempo, the key, chords, and add measures. This can be done by accessing the song settings, which are found at the top right screen represented by the wrench. We'll first make a change to the tempo by tapping the arrows up or down. In this case, we're going to go down to 74. And change our key to F major. I'm going to edit the chords because I need a C7 chord, and I'd also like to change the order of them. So I'll come over to the A minor and change that to an F major. By having the chords in order, it makes it easier for my students to go through the different sequence of the chord progression. My second chord will be a C7 chord. And then, finally, all I'll need for the first few measures of the song is B flat major. I'm now done editing chords. The last step is to add extra measures because it'll only let me record up to 8. This can be done by clicking the plus sign at the far right, clicking on 8 bars, and then adding as many as I'd like. 32 should do for now. Now we're ready to record. Can you hear me? Oh, good. Okay, I'm back. All right, so hopefully that video was clearest explaining how you get your GarageBand track set up. Let's go to back to the lead sheet. Now what we need to do here is we need to record a sound. We're gonna, if you get a chance with this app, you'll see that on that previous screen of GarageBand that there's something that says autoplay and it says off and then 1, 2, 3, or 4. I talked about those and how they're all different pre-recorded accompaniment patterns. I guess I could show my screen again. Or my video. Okay, so you can see my screen. I'm back. Lots of technical things to worry about here today. So if we go to this GarageBand, or go to this lead sheet here, you will see that we have one measure of F, so we'll need to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll change to C7. When we change to C7, we're going to tap the actual symbol on the GarageBand app. But it's important to do it just before we see the C7. And I might be redundant because I think I mentioned that in the next recording. So let me show you that. looks like that didn't work, and you couldn't hear that video. The next one we should be able to hear what's going on in just a second. If I change my speakers, maybe we can hear the outlet a different way to hear this.
Now that I've recorded that track, I can see how it all lays out by touching the track screen button, which is located next to the blue instrument button. It'll change what my screen looks like as I tap that. And now I'm ready to add new tracks.
Okay, so that last video might be unclear. Hopefully this next one will kind of help you grasp how do we record this. How do we actually record into GarageBand? In just a moment, I might actually be able to put up a reflector of my iPad so you can see it live. The problem is delay. Just lots of media to show, so that kind of makes it difficult, but we'll do the best we can. Let's go back, see if we can do the second track, and maybe that will make a little bit more sense if this will play for us. With Hey Jude, we probably could get away with just the piano part alone, and then have your student play the melody, for example. But the purpose of a background track is to sound full and rich and something exciting. So to do that, we need to add new tracks. Before I can add my second track, though, there's some things that I need to do to this first track that I've already recorded. You'll notice that Hey Jude, that first section that we just went over, is 8 measures long. But you'll notice that I recorded 9 measures. This is not a bad thing, and it can be fixed easily. If you tap on the track, I can drag back so that it's just 8 measures completely. Then from there, you'll see that there's a repeat sign, and I'll need to repeat it. This is done by clicking loop. If I pinch in on the screen, you can end up seeing the whole thing. You'll see that I repeated maybe 4 times. I only want 1 repeat, so I'm just going to drag the track back. So we have just 1 repeat now. Now I am ready to add a new instrument, and I think I'll add a bass guitar. The bass guitar would be added the exact same way, using an autoplay. You don't have to use an autoplay at this point, but it could be helpful. So the bass guitar, I think it would be nice if it came in perhaps on the second repeat. And I'm going to use autoplay 1 on this one as well. And we'll see how I can do with this. So I just added the bass guitar, and now I can go on and add drum tracks, strings in the background, an acoustic or an electric guitar on top of that. I'm going to get busy doing some work here, and in a short amount of time, come back with something a little bit more complete. And I should be back. Here's my voice. Okay. All right. Okay. So if things can get more complicated, hopefully this is starting to make some sense to you if you haven't used GarageBand before. Okay. Now when we go back into here, these next videos I don't need to switch the audio out because a good quality recording isn't as necessary here. Okay. So Hey Jude is starting to come together, and I'm not going to go through every single step and every single track, but I am going to show you the finished project in just a moment so you can see what the vision is. First of all, let me show you some of the cool different sound effects. Here we have the guitar. I'm going to play this clip, and you'll see that you can actually strum the guitar. You won't see my finger moving, but you'll see the strings moving. We don't have any sound on that, but you can see what's going on there. I think I can get that sound back up. I think I just missed the output change. There we go. Now you can hear the guitar. So kind of cool. The kids really love strumming the guitar, especially because they think they're in piano lessons, and mom and dad thinks that they're in piano lessons. But here they get a little bit of a guitar lesson, and they're creating their own background track. Now check out strings. Strings is really neat. That might be poor audio, but try it out for yourself. You'll love it. If you move your finger back and forth across like this, it creates the slow string sound. If you tap it, you have staccato and pizzicato. Then we have the drums. As you can imagine, you just use your fingers. And then we have the smart drums. The difference between the regular drums and the smart drums is that these are pre-recorded, just like everything else is. But you can still customize it quite a bit. But you won't be tapping the drums to stay in time. This is great. This is a great tool to use to keep your kids in time. And by the way, this is a great resource to use when you're playing scales. Turn on a little beat, and it changes the enthusiasm and excitement level of your students when it comes to doing technique. Okay, so this last video is the last time I'm going to change between computer audio and my mic audio. This will be the final. Not the entire song, but just that first A section with all the different layers put in there. Hope you enjoy. Okay. All right. So that was the final product. Keep in mind that this whole time you need to use your lead sheet as a guide for when the chord changes happen. Laying your first track will probably be the most difficult one with your students, but once that's laid down, it's a lot easier to add everything else in. It just starts to make sense. Now, I suggest that as homework, before you try this with your students, go to musicnotes.com and type in your favorite pop song from any era. See if they have it. And if they do, learn how to play it, the lead sheet, just like I showed you, and then create your own GarageBand track to play along with. Once you've done that for yourself one time, you'll probably know enough to try it out with your students. Now, along the way, you're going to run into some obstacles, and there'll be little problems. So inside the GarageBand app, there is this nifty little question mark at the top right. You might not be able to see it right now. If you tap on that, on any screen, it'll give you some clues, some hints, or instructions on how to use the app. Of course, you can always search on Google for other ideas on how to use it as well. These tracks are, I believe, you can export these as MIDI. I usually just export them as an audio file and email them straight to the parents. But I'll have to look into that. I just saw someone that asked about MIDI files and if they can be exported. I know they can, but I think you might have to import them into a more something like Logic Pro, which is Apple's main audio software. So, well, that's lead sheets and GarageBand for you, and how to make a background track. So what does this have to do with creativity and composition? Well, there's lots of creativity involved, as you can tell. Perhaps once you've created your background track, mute your melody and have the student improvise on top of that. Then they can create their own song that's unique to them. Melodies can be copyrighted, but chord progressions can't. For the most part. So keep that in mind as your students are writing their own music. It's okay to play along with the background track. It's okay for them to have that assistance and that help. So thank you for coming today and bearing with the technical changes and difficulties that we had. I hope that you, in 45 minutes, I hope you got a glimpse of some of the things you can do with your students. I'll open up to question and answers right now. There's a lot of things I didn't cover. So perhaps your questions might answer some of those things. So if you have time, stick around until 10. I can go for half an hour until 10:15. But let's get started on questions. I just need to make my question box expand out so I can see everything. I'm going to start at the top. So it says, can you rename the first app for me? Something tune. Perhaps that was Isle of Tune. I think that's the one that was mentioned. If I go back, I can see exactly what that was. And what is the goal of Isle of Tune? It's just kind of like a play mat. It's just a play place to get music written down. The ultimate goal is to create a fun song, basically. We'll just go back to these slides and we'll see exactly what that one. I think there's another one that they might be referring to. I have a long ways to go. Anyway, I don't know if I'm going to make it back there. Oh, I know what I need to do. This is much easier. There we go. So we have Tune Train. That was probably the one that you were talking about. Forgive me. Okay. And then the next one was Music Learning Lab. So, okay. For Mozart, can you write in your own songs instead of using the preloaded songs? Yes, you can. You can change any of them. You can start a brand new file, your own song. How do you create your own chord progressions in iReal Pro? That's a very good question. That could take up a whole nother webinar. I'm going to save that one for another time. Look, like I mentioned before, there are a lot of other great presenters. iReal Pro is just one that I just scratched the surface of. I'm not a pro at iReal Pro. I just barely started using it when I found out about it from Leela J. Viss in her last webinar, and still have a lot to comprehend. But it's there, you know about it, and you can explore it. Notate me. Can you print the clean staff version? Yes. In fact, I don't think you can print your handwriting version. I think it's only the clean staff version. You can connect a MIDI keyboard on most of these apps, including GarageBand, and then you can import a MIDI keyboard on Notion. You can also print for Notion. These are great questions coming in. Oh, where did you get the holder for your iPad that has a clear front cover? And you notice in the background, we have a few iPads in the studio. They all have the same case. We Googled fun child-proof iPad case, and these came up on Google. I'll send you a link. I'll send everyone a link with these different apps and this case. Let's go down to the next question. So someone was trying to download TuneTrain from the App Store, and they got the following message: this item you've requested is not currently available in the US store. Thanks for letting me know. I don't know what to do about that, and I don't know why it wouldn't be available unless there's some copyright issue. But good to know. I'd like to have some others try that and see if that's the case for everyone. That's interesting. Someone wrote, C minor 7 is the second chord in Hey Jude. Yeah, I fixed that. I fixed that mistake, but I didn't want to record the video. It's definitely a C7, not a C minor 7. This webinar, next question from Angela, will we be able to rewatch this webinar in the future? Yes, it is being recorded. You won't be able to see my video, but that's okay. You'll just hear the audio. I think it's better that way. Okay. Let's go down to some GarageBand questions. So what is the website for the lead sheets again? That's musicnotes.com. Would love to see a 2-hour webinar on just GarageBand. It has a lot of potential, and it can be overwhelming. Keep it simple. When you first start using it, just use autoplays. Make sure that, I don't know if you saw this in the video, because I think the one that got deleted, it didn't have this. Oh, when setting up the score, you did see that one. How to make the tracks longer. That's a common problem that people run into, is they get to 8 measures and they can't do anything else, and they don't realize all you have to do is click this add button right there. Notefly versus Notion. I know Notefly. I know that my students, it's easy enough for them to use at home with a little bit of training. Notion, I haven't had that similar experience with. Personally, as far as music notation goes, I feel way more comfortable on a computer, regardless of the program, than on the iPad currently. I think that's just a matter of what I've practiced and what I've trained in. I think soon enough you'll see composers that feel very comfortable writing and notating on iPads. But generally speaking, when you're writing a full orchestral score, for example, you need a bigger screen to see what's going on. It can be overwhelming just navigating the smaller screen. But what I do know about Notion is it is top notch. It is a very good quality program. Will it replace Finale or Sibelius? Oh, I don't think it will ever. But it is a great program. Okay. Someone asked, why use iReal Pro instead of GarageBand? I've heard of some people doing gigs and shows with iReal Pro. As far as jazz music's concerned, they have a lot more beats there. It's a lot quicker to create your background track once you figured it out. You don't have to record it and watch it record all the way through. If you just type in the chord progressions, then it just spits it out really quickly. So I would say they're not really comparable. They're very different. So. Just a comment from May Brinkman. She said, I'd like to point out that lead sheets are also really great ways to help with ear training and music theory, especially for a song like Hey Jude. You have the student learn the melody and tell them use the 1, 4, and 5 chord to figure out the accompaniment for the verse. I couldn't agree more. Lead sheets are very helpful with theory. And I'd actually say that when you teach the 1, 4, 5 chord progression, I prefer to teach them as in root position first. When we do, second inversion for the 4 chord? When we do second inversion for the 4 chord and we tell them that that's the 4 chord, they can memorize that, but it doesn't make sense why it's the 4th chord. But if it's in root position, they can count up 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 5 chord. And that seems to make more sense for my students. Then I teach them out inversions. Whereas you see in a lot of the method books, they just jump right into inversions just because it's easier to play that way. I don't think it helps with comprehension as much. But there's pros and cons to both. That's a great point you made. How do you print from an iPad? That could be a whole tutorial by itself. First of all, the simple way, if you don't know how, and you don't really care how you print your files, you can email them to yourself and then print them from a computer. That's the first and quickest way to do it until you have it set up on the iPad. To print from an iPad, you need a printer that's compatible, and then it's as simple as, let's see if I can go in and demonstrate how to print something. If I just open up Safari, okay, I should be able to print from here. I'm not prepared to do this, so I don't know if this is going to work. Okay. So right here I have a web page with Philip Phillips. If I click this box in the, you can't see, that's too bright. Anyway, there's a box at the top left of the screen that has an arrow going out of the box. If you click on that, it's one of the options to print. And then it will ask you what printer you can select. So your printer has to be wireless, it has to be set up. But once you have that, that's pretty handy in lessons to be able to print straight from the iPad. This is a great question. We've received this in every webinar. How do you use a MIDI keyboard with the iPad? You need the iPad camera connection kit. If you look on this side of the iPad, you'll see that this has a small connector. This one back here has the older wide connector. So you get the iPad camera connection kit, and then you're going to need the UX16 Yamaha MIDI cable. I may have gotten that wrong. That has two MIDIs on the end. You plug that into the back of your keyboard, and then the iPad camera connection kit going to the iPad. It'd be a lot easier if I showed you how to do that than to explain it. But on newer keyboards, you'll look on the back. Some of them have a printer cable connector. And then all you need is a really cheap printer cable cord. You don't even need the two MIDIs anymore with some of the newer keyboards that are coming out. Someone asked, just curious, how many people were viewing this webinar today? The peak had 64. So thanks for coming, everyone. We appreciate that, and looks like most everyone's still here, curious about the question and answers. So it looks like Toon Train might actually be extinct. It is no longer in the App Store. I've seen a lot of comments about that. A lot of you have been checking to see if that's there anymore. Hopefully that comes back. I'm glad I have it. It's a great app, but I have no idea why it's not available. Back on the topic of printing music from your iPad to a printer. The only two apps that you could really print that would make sense to print anything from would be the two notation apps I showed you, and yes, they both can print music. Or you can save it as a PDF, email it to yourself, and print it from a computer. Tammy asked, when you're editing the chords in GarageBand, if there are only 3 chords in the song, would you say none for the remaining 5 chords? I don't think there's an option to say none. But if there is, it's not necessary. You could, if you do have that option, you could do that. What I've found is in the entirety of most pop songs, you'll use all of those chords and may even need to change them mid-song. I'm pulling up a track right now to verify that. To see if that's really the case, if it says none. Yeah, you can make it say none so it goes blank. That's not a bad idea if you want to keep it looking simple for your beginners. Once again, I don't know if you can see this, but I just made these ones go blank. So, yeah, you can change those to none. That's good to see. Thank yous. Appreciate that. Someone has to put their kids to bed because they're in Namibia, and I hope I said that country right. Thank you for attending. I can type an answer actually and send this to everyone. The cable is the UX16 MIDI by Yamaha. I didn't realize I could send messages to everyone. Will the Yamaha UX16 work with the newer iPad connection, not the 30-pin? The answer is yes. You just need the updated camera connection kit. If you have an iPad, does that mean you automatically have GarageBand? No, you have to download that. It's a free app as a demo, and you have access to limited sounds, and then there's an in-app purchase to get the rest of the sounds. And it's very, I can't remember the price on it, and I can't look that up here because I've already purchased it. But it's really affordable. It's a one-time payment, and then you have access to all of the all of the sounds that are there. So in GarageBand, when you're editing the chords, how do you put the F chord first? You tap on the first chord on the left here, and then you change that one. So even though I have, for example, I have D minor over here, let's say I want to move D minor, I can't drag it and move it over, but what I can do is I can change this A minor right here to D minor. And I know that screen's very bright, so you can't see it very well. If I lighten that up, maybe you can. Then you get the reflection. So that's how you move the chords around. You really don't need to move them, but it can make it easier for students to go through the chord changes. Okay, so just a couple more questions, and if you have any questions, I'm through the list of them. I'm happy to answer a few more if you have questions. If not, I'm happy to end this webinar. These last two questions say, how do we listen to the recording of this webinar? You will receive a link through your email. And what about the other two? Were they recorded? The answer is yes. And I can provide links for those as well. They're hosted in different locations, but I think we're going to consolidate them and put them all in one place. If you go to youtube.com and you search JoyTunes, you might find a YouTube page that has those webinars on that page. But the audio is really out of sync with the video, even worse than seeing it live, actually. There's still a lot to learn, but it can be difficult to watch. But if you're interested, please go take a look at them. Okay, well, it was nice speaking with all of you. Thank you for attending. There are no more questions, so if you do have any, feel free to find me on Facebook. My name's David Love. We can be friends. I'm okay with that. You can ask questions there. There are lots of resources online, like iPad Piano Teachers Group. Search for that group online, and you can find more information about how to use the iPad in lessons. You can also go to the JoyTunes Teachers. There's lots of conversation there about using the iPad in lessons as well, especially with their own apps. Now, thanks for attending. Hope to see you in 2 weeks. I'll be giving another webinar next time on how to keep your kids engaged during summer, even if you're not teaching them and if they're not coming to lessons. How can you stay connected with them through the iPad, through Piano Maestro? Lots of great things to show there, new features, and lots of great ways to keep kids engaged and keep them interested in piano lessons. Thank you so much for attending. Have a wonderful morning, afternoon, wherever it might be in your time zone. Thanks for watching.